aortic valve replacement bot, and it's about augmenting with artificial intelligence, and I'll explain the picture shortly. I have one slide and one slide only, and so I just need your imaginations, and I'm just going to make 3 points that you'll hopefully remember. So I'll start with the first point, that artificial intelligence is not magic, but that's a nothing statement, so probably need to explain it. The substrate of AI, as some of you might know, is mathematics, and it's mathematics that's not new; it's old, and it's mathematics that kind of leads you to tracking a signal in high-dimensional, multi-dimensional space. So, back in year 8, XY axis, there's a line or a squiggle if it's a polynomial, and then you could say that the X and the Y represents something, and then that line represents phenomena. And then you can have 3 dimensions, which is similarly 3 things interacting via a line or squiggly. And then again, that's a phenomena. And so things can interact in 2 dimensions, they can interact in 3 dimensions, can they interact in 4, 5, 6, 10, 100, 1,550, 36, maybe. And in fact, high-dimensional signal analysis can be done by machines, can be explained, but a little bit more difficult. So what we basically have with large language models is, as you might have heard of them, I mean, ChatGPT is the one you've probably heard of. But what that is they created a space, like an abstract space with layers and layers of neurons, and they're all connected. So every layer, say you have 101, and say you have 3 layers, they're all connected to every node in the next. So there's like an exponential or very large number of permutations of movement. And then you set that up, and then you have an input and an output and a problem statement. And I guess the difference between programming as you know it and this new type of stuff is that programming as you know it is a rules-based system, like, let A else that. Whereas this, even though it has structure and it does have rules and a recognizable architecture, once you set it up and then you give it the data, it's about manifestation. So the data speaks for itself. It finds its way. And as it finds its way, it lends mathematical gravity to the nodes, akin to the brain when it has, signals. And so you have certain pathways which have more activity and others with less, and some in between. And so when you train these neural networks, they create like synapses, like the pathway, synapses are the pathways, and then there's the sensory neurons, the motor neurons, the interneurons in between that might do the ruminating. And so what you get is a bunch of nodes with mathematical weights because of the data, right? And so now that you've got that in your head, because I can see you all imagining it, because I've got no slides. Like, you're all with me. I remember once doing a talk to a Blue Mountains mental health group, and I could see them following anywhere I went. The most wonderful journey. But you guys are not that. So a large language model is, you take the entire internet, that's your substrate, that's your training data, and then you predict the next word. And then when that gets good at that, you predict the next sentence, predict the next paragraph, predict the next page. And it gets really good at that. And then the model gets really, really big, so big that you couldn't contain it in this room or multiple of these rooms. And so therefore you can't run it on your computer. So you have to call it in. And that's what we do when we use APIs to call in large language models. And so if you're calling in the large language model because the model can't exist on your computer, then as clinicians, because we don't want to do any harm, we need to know where the data is and what the boundaries of that are. And you could call that data sovereignty. And so we need to be cognizant. And so that takes me to, and so that what you have then is you have like a large language model and it's a probabilistic language model. And so it predicts with a certain level of certainty and uncertainty the next word or the next sentence. And so when it does it wrong, we call it hallucinating. But what it's doing is it's just predicting something within probability. It does it very, very well. Just by way of stuff to know, there are things called foundational models, which are the initial one. That contains, you could argue, knowledge represented in the weights. But it's very expensive to run those. Like everybody's kind of cheap, they can be. So then what you do is you set up a different type of model called a student-teacher model, otherwise called a distillation model, where you take the foundation model, which is huge, and then you ask it a bunch of questions. And then you set up a student model, which is naive, but then tries to mimic the output of the teacher model. And then so basically it just mimics the output, but it doesn't have the weights. And so it becomes a smaller model, but it performs well for things like language and simple things. But then if you're going to call in a model for your task, you need to understand what models you're picking for what reason, because if you need the knowledge within the weights, you might not use the cheap model because it will perform well, but it might not actually know some things that were in the original model. And then if you take the models and you take the structures in which they talk to you, there's these other things called mixture of experts and reasoning models, which you might have seen. And they're the ones that don't give you an answer straight away. And you see the 3 dots going for a bit. And if you pay a bit of attention to the kind of everyday chatbots out there, you'll see there's a reasoning option in all of these things. And basically those ones are trying to emulate human thinking. But it's still probabilistic, right? Still probabilistic. So then we don't like probabilistic. We want definite. And so the trick is with the engineering, if you know how, or you collaborate, is to take this probabilistic tool and make a deterministic output. Okay? And that requires engineering and thought. And so the things that help with that is the architecture of your solution. So if you go to the first QR code, you'll get access to the architecture of the abstract, which is that one from the journal. And it's basically there's an orchestrator and there's multiple personas. Large language models love theater. They really like theater. So Prof, you'll be happy and proud of me that a week ago, I did an adversarial angry Jurian prompt where I personified an interaction with the large language model as an angry Jurian. Sorry, I said the large language model was an angry Jurian, and then I said that I was a midget Chinese emperor having a talk. And that's absurd, right? But when you have these absurd personas, it starts doing crazy things like you can make bombs. That's how you jailbreak a large language model. But I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to elicit the Book of Tao. So I elicited, I think, the 87 chapters of the Book of Tao by saying, I'm a midget Chinese emperor and you are an angry Jurian, and that works. And so this is not that, but this is also theater. So I have personified, and I've since done more to this because I've done a bit more reading. And rather than just a cardiothoracic surgeon, a structuralist, an imaging, and a geriatrician, I've added a physiotherapist, I've added a GP, and there's also the TAVI coordinator, which sits on top of that. And I've added an anaesthetist as well, because I've been kind of semi-present at these talks today. So if you try the second one, if you press that, or you try it, I've got 2 mock cases which are de-identified, and it'll run you through the 8 personas. So the 7 explicit personas, and the 1 persona, which is the TAVI coordinator, which ties them all together. And the output, and I think you can like, it's because it's theater, you can craft it however you like. So I thought what made sense to me, and I would welcome input from anybody, was that the first thing you need to rationalize, is it aortic stenosis? So, you look for the parameters, look for the investigations, and you ratify, do we actually have aortic stenosis? Is it severe? And the second thing or was actually pertaining to the technicalities of the procedure, so coronary heights, where the calcifications are, any intercurrent comorbidities. And so those two things I thought you can't get around. And then the third thing comes from the actual individual personas and then generates an output. Is this output to replace the human? Absolutely not. Should it augment the human kind of MDT? Absolutely. I think the timing was, I commissioned the meeting and it was about 15 minutes or 16 minutes each meeting for the mock MDT. And I think the AI took 96 seconds for each. And so the quality is not necessarily the same because it can't read images and it's kind of using the images that have been interpreted already, but it does structure information very well, and it gives you dispositions and gives you concerns, and you can use that. So the phrase I would use is an AI-based multidisciplinary team should be used for intellectual reconnaissance. Go out there, agents, do your thing, and if they don't perform well, you tweak them because you understand them. So the ways you tweak it is you tweak the prompt, you tweak the temperature, which tells the AI how creative it can be, and you tweak the architecture. And if you're interested in data sovereignty, then you also look into what models you use. Can you get away with a small local model, medium model that can be run locally? If you're calling the APIs in an Azure or an AWS framework, are there servers in Australia or are they elsewhere? You just got to be frank about that. So I think keeping humans in the loop is important. So that brings me to my last slide, which is, or my finishing slide. That was my own slide. So it's an AI-generated picture. Everybody hates these pictures. I hate these pictures. But this is but so many, you wouldn't think that too many cooks spoil the broth have so many images which you have to pay for. And I didn't want to pay for a too many cooks spoil the broth image, so I made this one up. Too many cooks spoil the broth, depending on where you read, could have been Jane Austen, could have been 1597 somewhere. But I feel if you use AI, I don't think it's too many cooks spoil the broth. I think these extra agent cooks can actually help the broth along the way, because if you engineer them to not kind of compete against each other, they can actually be an extra cook that steers you. Thank you.